Are you spending money on synthetic fertilizers only to get mediocre harvests? What if a method from 10,000 years ago could give you between 22 and 55% more efficiency in your land use, without chemicals, without expensive equipment, permanently? Here's what industrial agriculture doesn't want you to know. Here's the soil science that indigenous civilizations mastered millennia ago, and that researchers from Cornell, Penn State, and Iowa State have just validated with hard data. Squash was the first crop domesticated in the Americas. Not corn, not beans, squash. And the raised mound technique they used to grow it wasn't primitive. It was agricultural engineering so sophisticated that modern science is only now understanding why it works so well. Today, we're opening a vault of knowledge that time almost buried. If you're tired of depending on products you have to buy every season, this will change the way you think about farming forever. But before we unlock these secrets, if you're serious about rediscovering the forgotten methods that fed entire civilizations, subscribe. We're rebuilding the knowledge that modern agriculture tried to replace. Here's what most modern farmers don't understand. Soil isn't just a medium to hold plants up. It's a living system. And 10,000 years ago, the indigenous peoples of the Americas already knew this. The oldest evidence of domesticated squash comes from Naquit's cave in Oaxaca, Mexico. Carbonized remains and phytolith analysis on stone tools date these specimens to approximately 8,000 years before Christ. Archaeologists have confirmed these dates. This means squash was domesticated several thousand years before corn. Think about that. While Old World civilizations were still discovering basic agriculture, the peoples of the Americas were already refining squash cultivation techniques. And then something revolutionary came along. The complete Three Sisters system, corn, beans, and squash, grown together in mounds, was widely adopted across North America by approximately 1070 of the Common Era. This means indigenous communities refined these techniques for millennia before European contact. Among the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Iroquois of the northeastern United States, the system was called Dioheco. Ethnologist Arthur Parker documented in 1910 that the Seneca had cultivated this polyculture for at least 500 years before European contact. Women held exclusive responsibility for agriculture. The crops were considered divine gifts protected by guardian spirits. The Haudenosaunee creation story teaches that corn, beans, and squash grew from the place where Sky Woman's daughter was buried. This wasn't superstition. It was respect for a system that worked. Want proof of what this method could achieve? Look at Cahokia. Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis, was the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico. At its peak between the years 1050 and 1200 of the Common Era, it housed between 15,000 and 40,000 people. This entire population was sustained by Three Sisters agriculture. Paleoethnobiologist Gail Fritz of Washington University documented in her 2019 book, Feeding Cahokia, that all available crops increased in abundance, giving urban Cahokia a biologically diverse food base, a city of tens of thousands of people, without synthetic fertilizers, without machinery, without pesticides, just the mound method and the Three Sisters. Modern industry tells you that you need their products to feed populations. History says otherwise. Now comes the part that will change how you plant. The exact construction of the mounds. Traditional Haudenosaunee mound construction followed precise specifications. The mounds were approximately 12 inches high and 24 inches wide, with flattened tops. They were arranged in staggered rows, separated by approximately 4 feet. Women built these mounds using hoes, without plowing. They simply heaped soil into the characteristic shapes. The process began in late spring. Haudenosaunee tradition specifies planting when dogwood leaves reach the size of a squirrel's ear. The planting sequence was carefully orchestrated. First, 3 to 6 corn kernels at 1 inch deep in the center of each mound. When the corn reached between 6 and 12 inches in height, Typically 2 to 3 weeks later, bean seeds were planted around the stalks. Squash went on the outer edges, or every 7th mound. Why this specific order? Because each plant has a role. Soil amendments varied by region and available resources. Northeastern tribes commonly buried fish heads and herring in the mounds as fertilizer. This is the practice they famously shared with the Plymouth colonists. Wood ash from controlled burning improved soil pH and provided potassium. Some traditions included soaking corn seeds in medicinal tea before planting. None of this was random. It was applied, science developed through generations of observation. Now, the scientific principles. And this is where modern agriculture should be paying attention. First, drainage. Elevated planting prevents waterlogging during heavy rains. During floods, plants survive when roots remain elevated above water level. The mound is a natural drainage system. Second, soil warming. Elevated soil warms faster in spring than flat ground. This is critical for frost-sensitive corn. You're extending your growing season without greenhouses or plastics. Third, and this is what the fertilizer industry doesn't want you to understand, plant synergy. Corn provides vertical support for beans to climb. Beans fix nitrogen in the soil, fertilizing their companions naturally and for free. The large squash leaves shade the soil, suppressing weeds without herbicides and retaining moisture without constant irrigation. 3 plants doing the work that industry tells you requires dozens of products to achieve. All right, we're halfway through. If you're still watching, it means you're serious about freeing yourself from dependence on products you have to buy every season. Now come the numbers the industry would rather you didn't know. If you're getting value from this, hit the like button. That tells us you want more of this forgotten knowledge uncovered. The most comprehensive scientific validation comes from Dr. Jane Manti Pleasant, a woman of the Tuscarora Nation and Associate Professor Emerita at Cornell University. She's a nationally recognized expert in Iroquois agriculture. Her landmark 2016 study, published in Ethnobiology Letters, demonstrated that the 3 sisters produce more energy and more protein than any monoculture or crop mixture. She calculated that this system can sustain 13.42 people per hectare per year on energy alone. Let that sink in. A method from thousands of years ago, validated by an elite university, outperforming modern agriculture. Her replication studies achieved corn yields of 22 to 76 bushels per acre. But here's the data point that should make you question everything you've been told about agriculture. Her research demonstrated that Haudenosaunee farmers produced 3 to 5 times more grain per acre than European wheat farmers during the 17th and 18th centuries. 3 to 5 times more, without tractors, without chemicals, without corporations. The 3 Sisters Project at Iowa State University, initiated in 2020, represents the most significant collaborative research effort currently underway. Led by Dr. Christina Gish-Hill and Dr. Marshall McDaniel, the project partners with growers from the Santee Sioux, Omaha, Oneida, and Menominee nations. First-year results, published in Agriculture and Human Values in 2022, found results that challenge the industrial agriculture narrative. Short-term soil respiration increased by 24% in 3 Sisters plots. Extractable nitrate decreased by 54%, indicating that plants were absorbing nutrients more efficiently instead of letting them escape into groundwater. Microbial biomass improved by 32%. A Penn State study found yield advantages of up to 30% over monocultures. The mechanism identified was the complementarity effect. Different root architectures explore different soil zones. The land equivalent ratio is the metric that sums it all up. Meta-analyses find values of 1.22 to 1.32 for intercropping systems like the 3 Sisters. What does this mean in practical terms? It means polyculture requires 22 to 32% less land to produce equivalent yields. Less land, less work, fewer inputs, more food. Industry sells you the idea that you need more fertilizer, more pesticides, more equipment, more of their products. This ancient method tells you that you need less, but better integrated. Now, I have to be honest with you. There are important caveats, and I'm not going to hide anything from you. Individual yields within the polyculture are typically lower than in monoculture for each crop separately. The Iowa State study found that beans in intercrop produced only 8.5% of monoculture totals, while squash reached 73.3%. But here's what industry doesn't want you to understand. The system optimizes for total caloric and protein production per unit of land, not for maximum production of a single crop. If your goal is to sell a single product in bulk, monoculture makes sense. If your goal is to feed yourself or your community with the greatest nutritional diversity possible, using the least amount of land, polyculture wins. The question is, who are you growing for? Let's talk about the contemporary revival, because this isn't just history. It's a living movement that's growing. The Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance is headquartered in Flagstaff, Arizona, and is incorporated with the Navajo Nation. It coordinates national efforts through programs including the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network, established in 2015. Rowan White, a Mohawk woman from the Haudenosaunee community, operates a 4-hectare educational farm in Nevada City, California. She coined the term seed rematriation, recognizing women's traditional role as seed keepers. White chairs the board of Seed Savers Exchange. Jessica Greendeer of the Ho-Chunk Nation manages Dream of Wild Health, a 12-hectare regenerative farm in Hugo, Minnesota. The organization maintains more than 200 seed varieties, reaches more than 12,500 people annually, and grew more than 6,900 kilograms of food in 2021. This isn't nostalgia. It's practical resistance. Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation brought these traditions to public awareness through her 2013 bestseller, Braiding Sweetgrass. In her chapter on the Three Sisters, she wrote, "I hold in my hand the genius of indigenous agriculture, the Three Sisters. Together, these plants feed the people, feed the land, and feed our imaginations." Genius. That's the word a renowned scientist and writer uses to describe this method that industrial agriculture tried to replace. Interest in the Three Sisters as a climate adaptation strategy has intensified since 2020. The Indigenous Climate Hub of Canada documented in 2024 that communities are turning to their traditional food systems to adapt to changing conditions. Studies show that intercropping increases yield stability. As climate change increases extreme events, this stability becomes more valuable than maximum yields from a single crop that can be lost in a single storm or drought. Nitrogen fixation by legumes can reach up to 73% transfer to companion crops. Free fertilizer produced by nature year after year. Some fascinating details that reveal the depth of this knowledge. Fourth sister traditions existed in several regions. The Tuwa and other southwestern peoples added Rocky Mountain bee plant to attract pollinators. Many Midwest tribes planted sunflowers at the edges as windbreaks and pollinator habitat. The diversity of squash varieties reflects millennia of indigenous plant breeding. Candy roaster squash, a Cherokee landrace from the southern Appalachians, comprises more than 40 distinct forms developed through more than 160 years of selection. The Oaxaca variety was recovered from seeds potentially 1,000 to 2,000 years old, found in a clay vessel on the Menominee Reservation. It was on the brink of extinction. It's now being redistributed through Great Lakes tribal networks. Butternut squash, which many assume is ancient, was actually developed in the 1940s as a modern cross. Not everything that seems traditional actually is. Seeds were considered cherished relatives and ancestors rather than commodities. Some traditions specified planting with kind thoughts 3 days before the full moon. Superstition? Maybe. Or maybe a way to ensure that the planter paid attention to the lunar cycle and their own mental state during a task that required care and precision. The Cherokee green corn ceremony continues today. For those wondering about using these techniques outside indigenous communities, Chef Piet Despain of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation offers guidance. I don't think you need to be indigenous to be able to take this teaching and do it at home. I think anyone that has the passion to respect the plants and respect the resources from which this knowledge comes, as long as they're honoring it and respecting it, and they're giving recognition to the original peoples to whom those planting methods and those stories belong. The technique is universal. Respect for its origin should be too. JG, a Ho-Chunk grower working with the Iowa State Project, explains the deeper meaning. Soil to me is just an alias for the earth. From an indigenous perspective, the earth is our mother. Fertile topsoil where seeds are placed is seen as her womb. So here's your action plan. If you have space to experiment, start with a single mound this year, 12 inches high, 24 inches wide. Corn first, beans when the corn is 6 inches tall, squash on the edges. You don't need to buy anything except seeds. You don't need special equipment. You don't need products you have to renew every season. The knowledge is free. The method has been proven by 10,000 years of practice and validated by elite universities. The research record establishes Three Sisters mound cultivation as a sophisticated agricultural system with measurable advantages. 22 to 55% greater land use efficiency, improved soil biology, greater yield stability under climate variability. The fertilizer industry profits from selling you the same products over and over again. They convince you that growing food is complicated and requires constant chemical intervention. They keep you dependent on their supply chain. But when you use methods that have existed for millennia, when you follow nature's blueprint instead of fighting against it, you break that cycle. If this changed the way you think about farming, hit the like button. Share it with someone who's struggling with disappointing harvests. Subscribe for more forgotten knowledge that industrial agriculture tried to replace. This isn't a lost method. It's being found again.